I want to start with a wholehearted welcome to us, to this us that we are. Christine asked me, well, isn't this a change in the thrust of this new association that we're starting, FOTA? And I said, really, it is a change. Our steering committee met and we were going to plan our fifth summit that is birthing this association of focusing oriented therapy around the world. And then we said, oh my God, should we just be planning when many parts of the world seem to be in such crisis? And we seem to be scattered in this crisis. It's sort of like COVID was a global crisis, although not every place on the globe. And now the social political situation seems to be in tremendous upheaval in many, many places. And we're gathering as focusing oriented therapists around the world to see how this situation is in our particular countries. And it's so important to us to know what others of us are experiencing in different places. Just as in COVID, it was so necessary to gather and to remember that we're an us, right? That we can support each other and dialogue with each other. And so that's the gathering today. And we will hear from a few people who will seed a conversation for us. And we'll have Joan Claxburn and Isabel Adan and Yahudi and Gosha and I think Astrid will just say a few words to kind of start us off. And then we'll have a half hour for our discussion. And I know that's so little an amount of time. So I'd appreciate it if you keep your remarks brief. I know that's very hard. And if you don't get to say what you really want to say, then we're going to have small groups for 25 minutes, and then we'll come back right at the end and hear a beautiful poem that Joan is going to read us. And I may have to interrupt if people get really enthusiastic and speak more than a few minutes. And please don't take it personally, but you can get mad at me about it. That's part of my job. And please raise your hand with the little thing on the computer, the little raised hand thing. And Isabel will be watching out for who is wanting to speak and keeping order. But now let's just take a breath together. Take in this moment that is precious and so important. We're making the little steps of change that we know about in focusing. And at times like this, I think of Jean saying that every human experience has a forward movement inherent in it. And we're here to sort of nurture and hold that forward movement and scatter the seeds that then we can maybe grow some more solid sense of community. Okay, I'm going to Joan.
Good morning or hello this afternoon to everyone. I'm going to partly read what I have to say to keep myself more succinct. What's happening in the world right now, I think we'd all agree, is alarming and disturbing and full of chaos and cruelty. And at times I experience it as almost unbearable. And I'm surprised that I don't feel very resilient. But like you, I'm also a therapist. I'm responsible for listening to and being a healing presence to others. So, how do we, as sensitive human beings in these nightmarish scenarios around the world currently, also sustain ourselves as therapists so that we can stay grounded and resilient and we can be the interaction that's healing? Because when we do find ways to stay calm and to stay hopeful, we co-regulate our clients who may be traumatized or angry or despairing. So I'm grateful that we're coming together today because community is an essential path to resilience. As long as we hold compassion for each other's suffering, I think we'll feel better for having gathered. And meeting today has also inspired me to take an inventory of the ways that I have found that are helping me as a person and as a therapist to sustain my hopefulness and to nourish my spirit. And I have found these approaches also allow me to be a somewhat more steady, sturdy presence for my clients. So hopefulness for me is the expectation that the future can be better and that we have the power to make it better. And so here are 5 ways that I have discovered that seem to amplify my hopefulness and my resilience. So the first is I am consciously connecting with others and appreciating those connections more deeply. Whether when joining with strangers to gather to make signs, make phone calls, protest on the streets, I feel less alone and somehow strengthened. I've also been intentionally deepening my connection to family, to friends, and to dear colleagues, sharing my vulnerable feelings and fears about various political situations and listening deeply to others. And in these times of danger and suffering, I more deeply appreciate the meaningfulness that comes from work with clients, and I cherish those impactful connections more than ever. The second way I've found to stay hopeful is looking for heroes, those who stand up, who write brilliant, articulate op-eds or essays or offer podcasts, those in government who show repeated courage to resist or stand up to power, or friends like Lynn Preston, who inspires me with her persistent efforts to create groups and classes that practice relating across differences. Heroism is contagious. A third way I've discovered for boosting my hopefulness is stepping back and holding a larger perspective. And I mean that in 2 different ways. First, looking to history to see how activism has helped change the trajectory of events, whether when young people in the US were able to stop the Vietnam War, what was accomplished by the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, the activism that led to gay marriage, and more recently, the Me Too movement. All of these historical changes give me hope. But also, I mean holding the larger perspective of my small place in nature, what Jen Lynn would call the big system. And when I'm open to the beauty and the awe that nature offers, or even when I can simply get myself out of my house and take a long walk and look at trees, my mood and energy are always elevated. And the fourth way is that lately I am making a real conscious effort to remember to replenish myself with art, with reading poetry and novels, going to theater, listening to music, dancing. All the arts sustain me and make me much more grateful to be alive. And so my last way won't surprise people here. It's rereading Jean Genlin, whose wisdom remarkably still brings new insights. Here's a quote. We do not need a metaphysical assumption that human process always moves towards health. We do not want sloppy optimism. With so much suffering and destructiveness all around us, optimism is an insult to those who suffer. But pessimism is an insult to life. Life always has its own forward direction, whatever else may also be occurring. Okay, who's next?
Isabel is going to speak next, but I think we just need a minute to take that in, Joan. It's so beautiful. Isabel, you have a word for us this morning.
I am too, Lynn, taking in what you share, and I know for many of you, it's interrelated. Out of the 5 pieces that Joan shared, there's probably pieces that touch your shore as well, right? I'm a therapist, and I live in 2 very different planets as a therapist. One is as a therapist for an agency, a large state agency that works primarily with young people who are chronically mentally ill or acutely mentally ill and either have been hospitalized a number of times, so maybe just have one hospitalization. And the majority of the young people that I work with in that setting are Latinx or BIPOC. I think that if we were to quantify that, we may have a 1% population that's white. And they all come from underserved community in the Brooklyn area, Brownsville, um, Bed-Stuy, I mean, you name it. And a lot of them, although they are born here, a lot of them, their parents are immigrants, and some of the parents' immigration status is not adjusted. So that's one universe. The other universe is where I have a private practice, a small private practice, and I work primarily with adults and primarily people from the African diaspora. And I probably can say maybe I have 3 white people in my caseload. And so the 2 very different universe, and yeah, what they meet, it's that the present political situation in this country has an impact in all of them, regardless of what their social location is. And so one of the ways in which I am appreciating your list, John, that I have integrated this into my practice is that first of all, I am showing up as a human being first. Um, and creating that conditions in the connection. So showing up as a human being, that's number one. Number two, and not to make a list, I make it very clear and not in a way of giving permission, but in a way of creating the conditions for both the young people and the adults that I work with to know that no topic is off limit in that space. And so many of the young people that I work with in my office, they can curse, and they always say, "Are you sure I can curse?" And I say, "Of course you can. As long as we in here and we behind these doors, you can do whatever it's gonna help you, right?" Um, and the third thing is when people don't name something, naming it myself. Because if it's in me, it's in them. And so really living up to that notion that we can serve as a mirror for the people that we are working with. And I think for me, if I was creating a list, it's that the other thing is I'm finding myself doing a lot more of what your your number 3 was. Um, Finding a different perspective and holding different perspective. And so within that number 3, what comes in is probably my number 4. It's leaning into my spiritual practice. And my spiritual practice in this moment is I'm following the teachings of the Buddha. And one of the teachings of the Buddha is around the 4 divine abodes or the Brahma Vihara. And one of those Brahma Vihara is mudita, or sympathetic joy, or altruistic joy. And so that both serves as a sustenance and awareness, because if I can find joy, if I can intentionally look for joy in these moments where so many people are suffering, that's a way of resourcing myself and recognizing that as a as a race, we are resilient. That even though we constantly are saying, "Oh, we never had things times like this before," there have been times like this before. There's been persecution before. There's been silencing before. There's been killing before. There's been all of that. We weren't there to see it, but it's not new, right? And so if I lean into this place of mudita or sympathetic joy and intentionally look for joy in those moments of distress, I can find that there's a bit of an edge for me to be able to be present for the people that I work with. And then the other thing, and not to borrow from, and not to borrow, but to contrast, or and not to compare. It's that what you say, the other one that you share around finding joy in the arts, whether it's reading, whether you're watching a movie. I get to work at 7. I'm scheduled to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, but I'm there by 6:15. 6:30 at the latest. And that 30 minutes, that 45 minutes, I am intentional about what I'm going to put into the time. It's not work. I can either go to the art room and I'll do some art. I'll read a little bit. I'll meditate. I'll watch a little silly something. People like to say cat videos, but it's whatever thing I can watch that doesn't involve anything. And so those are the things that I can do to resource myself. The other thing that I do is have communities such as this community throughout with different people in different places. Um, just last week I was telling Lynn that I was in a gathering of Black Buddhist teaching, Black Buddhist teachers who are women and who meet and support each other. And there's no agenda. We just come together and you just talk. That's nothing to do. That's nothing to create. You just being. And so really tapping into the community. And for me, the other thing is tapping into nature. And here's what I want to share what I observe, and I'll keep it brief. My own life experiences are not that different from the kids that I work with. So there's that sort of like correlation, there's that bridge. My mom and my dad, both of them came here um, illegally and had to adjust their status. And so I now leave, even though I came here and I came here through the proper channel. I live in constant fear right now. I turned down a teaching opportunity because I didn't want to travel outside the United States because I wasn't born here. And so what I noticed is that I'm holding the same fear that my parents were holding when their status was not adjusted. My mom received a letter and she didn't speak English, and I had to read that letter for her that she had to self-deport back in 1978. So we've been here before. This is no different. We were here before in 1996 during the Clinton administration, right? And at that time, I worked with people who, adolescents who were HIV positive. And one of my adolescents who came from Haiti and was HIV positive and had AIDS, full-blown AIDS, received a letter. It's called a PRUCO letter, right? And so we've been here before. So I lean into that there's wisdom that we already have, whether we are aware of it or not, from people who came before us. And the other thing that I really lean into and invite the families and the people I work with is that to really have compassion towards themselves when they are feeling like they're not out there demonstrating, protesting, and to really gauge for themselves, whether this is a safe action to take. Because that's also important that people understand and are aware of what the possible consequences can be, and then finding other ways where they can make contribution that may not necessarily bring too much light, right? Or too much, put them in the forefront. Is there another way that you can contribute? So that's pretty much how I hold it. And I just want to say, Lynn, as one last thing, thank you so much for creating this space, because I think it's important that we come together and talk about these things for ourselves and others. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabel. And it's so important that we share all of these things with each other. And as we thought, we're running behind schedule, and so we need to really keep maybe to 3 minutes things that we're going to say so that we can include everybody. We only have 3 more minutes of this part of our program before we have open it up to everybody. So I'm very pleased that Yahudit is going to speak to us now, but very briefly, hopefully.
Oh, thank you. And I'm very excited. It's the first time I'm here. And English isn't my language, so I wrote down a few words that I might forget when I need them. They might run away. And so thank you for inviting me. And reality is always changing and will always change. And uncertainty is the only constant and certain thing in our lives in this world. And the ability to bear existential uncertainty lies in connecting to our existential self-confidence. And that is really connected to focusing and to being able to live in our body and experience our body and have our anchor, to be anchored in our bodies. And I truly believe that one of the most powerful goals for resistance, no resistance, run away the word, is to know that I have myself in myself to live my life and to meet whatever life brings to my doorstep. And in social anti-focusing, we have the I space, the we space, and the beyond. So being able to experience our body, our bodily boundaries gives us a sense of self, and being able to sense being part of the community, part of the we space, gives us a sense of connection, and even taking a moment to sense being connected to the beyond, to the more that I know, the more that there is. I feel it, this space connects us to the more, to the solution, to things that we don't know yet, but that can unfold if we are open to them. And I call uncertainty, I say uncertainty is a threshold position. Everything we know has been already, and we are getting to know. And being in a sense of curiosity and sensing our body, and like focusing is always happening in the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to unfold. And there's a sense of connecting to the more and being with whatever opens up and presents itself. So sensing our body and being curious helps. I find it very helping to deal with whatever we need to deal with. So I hope it was less than 3 minutes. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think Astrid was going to say a few words. Is that right?
I expected to be just a participant. I wasn't aware I was going to say, present something, but
Well, Astrid, maybe you will be the first participant to speak because we are, yeah,
what-
speak as a participant and then we'll go
Yeah.
right into our
because
discussion.
thank you, Lynn. I can connect to what the previous people were saying, like inviting them more. And we have this grounding into being here and working with focusing with the whole body. So this embodying quality really matters to me so that I don't fly away when I listen to the news and fly away with worry. I'm working with activists actually. So to me, the pausing as a revolutionary pause was always a very meaningful way of unfolding the political dimension of focusing. So focusing for me is a philosophical life practice as well as a focusing oriented therapist practice. So to pause and sense what really matters right now, that gives me that space so something fresh can come in me even in the face of very immediate threats. Like I'm very concerned with the environment and with ecocide, with species leaving us for good. It's a real existential time, an existential challenge for us. And one other thing that really, really matters to me a lot is to differentiate in myself and in other people what is the personal trigger, like from my own personal history, maybe some trauma, maybe some issue in my family. And once that is touched, then to sense the global situation or that what comes to me. And in that differentiation, I find I can, as if it's sorting, something is sorting itself out and it doesn't get sort of an over a flow of my own personal history into that existential issue that is a global one. So this differentiation for me is very important, to respect both these dimensions. And another thing that really helps me is differentiating between empathy and compassion. And the immediacy of our spontaneous empathy very often leads to exhaustion. We empathize so much that we can't listen to any news anymore and we can't bear it anymore. And that is a very natural organismic response to suffering, no matter whether animal or the other human beings. And compassion is the being with. I am not that suffering, but I'm being with it, and I can sense more what am I wishing what could happen and sense what that feels like in me. And that way, there is a kind of a clearing of space in me so that the organismic or the bodying can respond with maybe a step into a direction that is helpful. But when I'm totally in the pain of what I see in empathy, I may be, do you say dumbfolded? I may not feel anything at all anymore after some time because it's so overwhelming. So that I find very helpful. I hope I made it a little clear what I'm thinking. And yeah, that's most of what I was hearing about the co-regulation and all that. So I can relate to that and I practice it. But I think I'm that's my contribution for the just now. Thank you for the patience.
Thank you so much, Astrid. And now we want to hear from all of you, anybody, and just keep your remarks brief if you can, and write them, and we're going to send out our comments also in our newsletter.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Helene.
Helene.
Okay. It's interesting hearing about, being a therapist to many, many people in the Washington, D.C. area and Maryland, Virginia, who are in real time kind of being hit with trauma, losing their jobs. And I, in turn, have to keep up with the news. So sometimes I know before that as it's happening so that I can not be freshly hit, but hold the space. But it's also interesting. I go between regulation and allowing myself to be shocked because there's something very fresh and raw about being shocked when somebody says in the Center for Infectious Disease down the block almost from where we live in Frederick, Maryland, that it's been shut down, animals have been euthanized, the equipment's being destroyed that are studying infectious disease and keeping people safe. That's just one example. Or in USAID, I mean, I have people that work in these agencies that have had people come in and just destroy years and years of work. And there is something that I also like, is what I'm saying about being shocked and feeling the blueprint of this is not right. And I so admire, talking also about our leaders, people like Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Bernie Sanders, Jamie Raskin, to be able to respond to that shock in a very coherent way. I'm really admiring that, and I'm holding that because I think the shock is also can be very useful in something about retaining our humanity of being shocked when the mayor of Newark is arrested, when people are deported who are actually even trying to listen to both sides, when me as a Jewish person is offended that we're being used to say, oh, we need to send this person out who had a voice about Palestinian rights because you are not speaking for me. And that's my raw shock and my raw humanity. So I'm going back and forth between regulating and holding a space for the human shock, and admiring and wanting to use as a model people who are able to respond to that shock in a meaningful way as leaders.
Thank you. Ruth, go ahead.
First of all, hi everyone, and thank you for pulling this together, those of you who did. Thanks, Helene, that was really helpful, hearing that. So some of the things that are useful for me right now, both in teaching Jewish mindfulness meditation and as a therapist, has been the idea of impermanence and holding, as you were saying, Isabel, that Buddhist perspective, reminding myself that this too is not forever and nothing is. And I can share that with people. There's also something, as you were all speaking about, of the more, that part of me that says, there is more that is going on than I can possibly understand.
Yeah.
And trying to rest in that space, with both being present to this moment as well as holding something of hope, or envisioning a future that would be a future of justice and care. And the other piece that you mentioned, Helene, about the shock, and Yakudit was speaking about the body, that the making room for my own rage when it's happening, and grief, and the enormity of grief. And somehow 2 books had popped up for me before I was teaching the other day. And one is called The Wild Edge of Sorrow. And one of the gates of sorrow was the gate of world grief, and our grieving for what is happening, and really the brokenheartedness that we carry all the time, I think, for the sufferings in this world. And yeah, there's an old book called The Impossible Will Take a Little While, and it's 50 little essays. This was published in 2004 or something, but essays from, wonderful activists and artists and such, talking about getting through difficult times, social and political, and we are in that for sure. So I guess that's what I wanted to share. Thank you.
Roshi.
Yeah, thank you all. It's really so helpful and meaningful to be together talking about what's happening together, and the impact on the people we meet with, and the impact on ourselves. I just want to just take one vector. I happen to have worked with my wife in that detention center, visiting detainees in Newark, in that area where the mayor was arrested. We often do disaster relief for the Red Cross and different things to just keep ourselves fresh on the ground and to feel some kind of meaning and purpose and agency in these kinds of times. So when my clients come in various stages of distress, specifically about their worlds being impacted, sometimes directly with the way their jobs are going, people working in the VA or hospitals or universities right now that are just, or agencies, wonderful agencies that are being defunded. There's practical aspects of survival, their personal survival, that obviously we touch on. In a larger sense, I try not to add to their political knowledge, although I'm a total junkie. Very, very embedded since my early adolescence in all of this kind of stuff. But I try and help people in global distress find again their own meaning and purpose and agency, in some way to find a way of serving in the present that matches their talents to some need. And so we explore that. We take time after listening and absorbing their global grief and not amplifying it, but building on it to restore the sense of not necessarily hope, but agency, and to see what their talents might be and help them think of possibilities of working in different ways. Doesn't always work out easily. I have an Olympic athlete who is a bit OCD and couldn't do some activity with young people teaching because of fear of germs. So that was not a bright idea to engage him with his that wonderful resource he has. But there were other things. He's a very talented person. So I've done some active shaping that way of trying to connect people to help defunded agencies or sometimes a politician they like to somehow get involved with that more personally. Thank you.
Thank you. Liz.
Hi. I find it all very confusing because I haven't formed this really beforehand, having to do with what do we care about and when. And there's something about this, that these are these horrible, trying times. And it feels as if, yes, immigrants, but these are horrible, impending, trying times for educated white middle class people. It's like these things have been going on for hundreds and thousands of years. Isabel pointed out, there's always been suffering, but even now, it's just fascinating to me that, we're kind of looking at Palestine and Gaza. We're still mostly not looking at Yemen. We're kind of mostly not looking at Sudan. And it's always been that way. And it's an interesting thing to me, of when do we pay attention? And if we were totally reductionistic people like Roger Dawkins, I think, is that his name, the biologist? Roger Dawkins in The Selfish Gene would say, the closer it is to your own DNA, you care more if your child is in pain than somebody's child whom you've never met who is in Gaza. And that somehow that's the natural biological order of things. It's Darwinian. It helps you, reproduce. That's such a scientific reductionistic point of view that I don't necessarily hold myself. It's an extreme, but I still find it fascinating. When do we start getting really nervous? And how come we have not been really nervous about people in many other places who have been having no health care? I mean, we're talking about, I think it's horrifying what's happening to scientific research in the United States. And yet, billions of people, millions of people have had zero health care around the world, ever. So I'm just throwing that out there. And I do find I'm not a Buddhist and don't know much about it, but I like that point of view, the little bit I know, because it embraces that universality of suffering. So there's some way in which I think maybe this would call our attention to the horrible stuff that's always been going on that we pay no attention to because somehow it just doesn't get us where we live.
Jillian, go ahead.
Wow, that resonated a lot, everything everyone said. I am an old focuser and a new therapist. And Joan, I know you and other people here, but I am in St. Louis. And what I find in the work I do, and I've been a Buddhist as long as the focusing, so those paths have raised me. I think they've raised me and saved me. But I try to work a lot with ground and space and just helping people in a very embodied way get that sense of ground and space. And to Liz's points too, that bigness can come, that big, making contact with the bigger global and the smaller, whether it's in little, turning toward little joys, the small joys. I have clients that are very scared. I'm in Missouri, it's a very red state. So I work with folks who are undocumented and a lot of trans clients and these very gentle people, there's talk of buying guns. They're going to fight clubs. These are, video game maker kind of art people. And so trying to keep them rooted in their art making and joy, going to their crochet circle. Laughter comes in, anger, that energy of anger, it can often turn to laughter sometimes, we know. So there's moments of that. So I think just that idea of just moving between, it's very, we're sitting in a chair. I actually am working telehealth. I have long COVID, so I can't meet in person right now, but helping people touch into that more. People were saying that bigger, also the pause, just being in this moment and what's in it. And there could be a sparkle in the heart, or there could be a crash in the stomach, but we're just hearing it together. So teaching them about that kind of inner world, and all that's right there inside. So, and I do a lot with like a mountain kind of image that I'll play with, and river images, and just sort of help, but how things bubble up from within. So just this whole inner world is a deep, deep resource. And then from that, branching out from that to community, to others. So it's kind of this inner and outer movement, ground and space movement, these different supports that we are. Anyway, I feel a little shy because I haven't been here, but thank you for the hour, because I could come. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Larry, I'm glad you found your hand. Go ahead.
No, I don't think there's any one way. Let's face it, this is so unprecedented for most of us. It's just, it's not only unprecedented, we never imagined this, we'd be in this place in our lifetimes. It seems impossible, ridiculous. This couldn't happen here. And I do like what you brought up from Jean's quote about the way that optimism is false, but so is pessimism. And the idea that life has its forward movement. I was born 10 years, 10 years after the Holocaust ended. And I've often thought about that. I've thought about how life went on, how Europe went on, how the Jewish people went on, and children were born, and and plazas in Europe came to life and were full of joy after this horror. So I hold that after the most existential danger that humanity has ever experienced, which was from 1920 to 1949, 46. And I just feel I don't know where this is going at all. That is the scariest part. I don't know that. I can't say for sure that this will end in 2 years or in 10 years or in 30 years. That is scary. I believe in humanity. And this is what I've had to deal with. I've had to learn to adapt. And I think all of our clients are learning to adapt. And that has both a bad side and a good side. Like if you're horrified and you stay horrified, you become immobilized. You become paralyzed. You become paralyzed. I get shocked. I get upset. I have clients also in the Maryland area, people getting hurt. But I can't live in a state of staying always upset for them or about the world. If I do that, I'm going to be, I start to lose my center. I start to not be able to be effective for myself. I can't move forward. When I realize lately that despite what's going on, I must teach the things that I know and continue to believe in what I know and write it down or touch people with it, because on some level, that's the future. On some level, even no matter what happens, I am seeding the future when I do that. And that is what gives me, that's what I have to hold on to as far as hope. And the other things are connecting with people to do what we can to fight this insanity and in our own ways. And there's fivecalls.org, and there are different ways of getting involved. And you do what feels right to you in that department. But I feel like connecting with people, connecting to people I cared about, and don't let this insanity make me think that I'm irrelevant or what I know is irrelevant. Because even if it was buried for 100 years, which I doubt, but even if it was, everything we know now will still live, in the future if we put it out there.
I want to say something.
Yes, please.
Hello, everybody. It's okay that I'm speaking now? Yeah? Okay. First, I want to say hello to Joanne, that I didn't see her for a long time, and she's very dearest and very important to me, so I'm very excited to meet her again. And also apologize that I didn't come from the early because I had some unexpected things, so I hope I'll be connected still. I think that when you are facing a terrible time, and in my region, in my country, we are now facing terrible time, and I think that sometimes people say that life is against them and became feeling very a victim and full of rage. And I remind myself and the people that I work with that life movement is for us, not against us. And sometimes when there are things we cannot understand, but there is it's a spiritual way of thinking, and focusing is getting me more spiritual. The more I do focusing, the more I feel more spiritual. So things are, at the end, are integrating. Even now, I don't know how, and I don't understand. There's some structure or some logic or some wisdom that even I don't understand. It's for me. It's not against me. And sometimes also life are containing, if we speak about uncertainty, people tend to see uncertainty as something wrong will happen. So they skip the fact that uncertainty is also a miracle. Also things that I didn't believe that it would happen, and it happened. So I want to keep this curiosity and openness, and not to be afraid of uncertainty, even to hug it. And also I teach myself and the clients that I'm working with to see things that coming to me as something that are lessons for me to become more bigger, to become development, and it's like part of my journey. And I do it a lot because I work a lot with people with disease and pains, and it's, for them, it's it's catastrophic. It's like the end of the world. And I hope to keep these roles and to keep us like the horizon or hope, or especially to let their healing force to be developed. So for me, even though sometimes I meet in life things that are for me with agony and sorrow and grief and pain, it's still life. It's a gift. Life is a gift, and it's not unlimited gift. There is an end. So we should take this gift and embrace it and be connected to our life energy. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it's time now to go into our small groups. Is there anything burning that someone wants to say before going into our small groups? We'll have groups of 4 or 5, and we'll have that for 25 minutes. Okay, so let's do that, and we'll connect in this more intimate way in small groups, and we'll come back for a closing at 12:25. Hi, welcome back. Welcome back. I had a lovely time in my breakout room.
Yes.
Hi, Jim. Hi. Hi, Marvin.
Hi.
Hi, Astrid. Helene. Yao, I didn't say hello to you. Hi, Yao.
Hi.
Hi, Yoka. So, I think Joan is going to read us a poem, and I just want to share with you this that I came across on Amazon that turns to all different colors, and it feels to me like a globe of hope. So I'm offering this as our closing image here. And Joan is going to read us.
Before I read the poem, I just wonder if we could all just take a moment to see sort of what's happening inside right now, having just had this wonderful sharing with each other. And just see if there's a word or a phrase or a gesture that captures how it is to be you right now. And then feel free to just share it. Anyone ready to share? The word that came for me was uplifted. Sophie?
Inspiring and a sense of belonging.
Strengthened.
Strengthened.
Shaky, strong opening.
The faith and hope of planning.
Expansion and warmth in the heart spreading throughout me, and almost towards joy.
Anyone else before we close?
Feeling my heart.
And I go right ahead.
Astrid, did you want to say
I feel a softness and a mildness in my heart, and I'm less judgmental just now.
Yeah.
Yes, I just felt it was a wonderful undoing of aloneness that sometimes happens in this work.
Undoing.
I sense gratefulness and softness.
So here's the little poem. It's called Lessons in Trying to Save the World by Nikita Gill. If you name it hope instead of impossible, if you hold it with tenderness, if you look around and see the faces of everyone you love trying to save the world with you, then this work becomes love.
Thank you, Joan.
Irit, in our little group, shared something, a quote by Ellie Hillesum, and I think that would be a wonderful ending for our meeting today. Can you say it, Irit?
Yeah, I said in a diary. It's a book, and it's about a young Dutch woman that were in the Holocaust, and she was murdered there. And she's writing in the diary as describing her life as a young woman with all kinds of movement of life. And then she said, I mean, it's free translation. She said, in times of agony and sorrow and despair, I put my hand on the chest of life, and the chest of life are covering me. And there's no hate or violence or agony that will stop me doing that.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to remind you that if you will send anything that you want to say, or a poem or an image, Sophie and I were talking about images, Yoko will put them all together in our newsletter, and we'll send that out to you, and maybe we'll have a part 2 of this summit. So if you'd like a part 2, let us know. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Jim.
Thank you. Great to be with you all.
Bye all.
Maybe
Thank you.